Hey, what's up guys, TechTine here and I'm back again with a brand new video. So before I begin, really quickly, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Also, if you like this comparison, leave a thumbs up. More Motorola versus Samsung videos are coming really soon. So with that being said, today we're going to be comparing the kind of entry budget level devices from both Samsung and Motorola. So that would be the Moto G5G 2024 that comes in at a price of $180 versus the Galaxy A15 5G that comes in at a price point of $199. So the way that I want to kind of break it down is we're going to of course start by talking about the design itself, then we're going to discuss the display, the speaker quality, the performance, the camera experience, and I'll kind of round it up in a conclusion to see which phone fits you better. So beginning with the design aspect itself, so both of these phones did step up the design from previous generation. Beginning with the Moto G5G 2024 model, the design of this phone is actually really good in my opinion. They stepped it up quite well. So previously they had this kind of weak plastic material that didn't really look good at all. This time around they gave us this kind of vegan leather material that not only provides a nice grip, also it provides kind of a element of elegance to the device itself, if that kind of makes sense. And if you actually look at it, they paid attention to the detail as well. So the back of the phone, that kind of vegan leather material wraps up all the way around, even to the camera housing itself. Obviously, this still needs to be a budget-friendly device, so the sides are made out of this kind of cheap plastic material that is easy to scratch, so keep that in mind. And flipping the switch to the Galaxy A15 5G, this is yet again another upgrade from the previous generation. Now, the previous generation, I had an issue with the durability, and also it did not really feel well in the hand, and it was kind of bulky in a way. So this time around, they somewhat slightly upgraded the material. It still is made out of plastic, but it looks more premium than it actually is. So the back has this kind of smooth texture to it, which one does make it very slippery, and it does catch kind of smudges really quickly. However, this kind of shade of blue that they have on the phone itself again gives this phone a nicer look and a nicer feel in the hand. Now I do have to say that the sides, while they are made out of plastic, they try to kind of make it unique where they put this indentation where the power button and the volume up and down are at. However, I have to say that it makes the power/fingerprint sensor really flat and harder to click. Now, if we put both of these phones side by side, the material of choice is different. One is using vegan leather, the other one is using just plastic that is kind of a matte finish and is very slippery. I would say from a convenience standpoint, the Moto G5G's vegan leather material just provides a better grip. However, it does also catch dust and lint, which is harder to clean on the Moto G5G surface versus the smudges and the fingerprints that you'll see on the A15, which you can just easily wipe off. So that's kind of the advantages and disadvantages of both of these materials. Now, if we look at the right hand side of both of these devices, again, they share very similarities. So your volume up and down, your power/fingerprint sensor is found on both of these buttons. Again, this kind of indentation and curvature where it leads to the power button and the volume up and down on the Galaxy A15 5G gives it a unique look. However, as far as tactile buttons themselves, I would lean a little bit more towards the Moto G5G. The camera experience here, one gives you a dual camera setup, the other gives you a triple camera setup. Again, we're going to be discussing that a little bit in depth later on in the video, so just stay with me here. If you look at the bottom of both of these devices, they both give you a 3.5mm headphone jack. The Galaxy A15 5G does provide a faster charging experience, so it does have a 25 watt of wire charging versus the 18 watts of wire charging found on the Moto G5G, so keep that in mind if you're thinking about purchasing either of these phones. Now, all in all, as far as the design goes, obviously looks themselves are kind of just a subjective topic, it's whatever you like. I personally lean more towards the Moto G5G because of the material of choice, just because it's kind of grippy and easier to hold in the hand and provides a decent texture. Now, flipping the switch to the display department, this is where things are drastically different. different. Well, let's begin with the Galaxy A15 5G. So the A15 5G provides a incredible display for the money that you're paying for this device. Mind you, this is a $199 phone unlocked. So with that $199, you get a 6.5 inches of Super AMOLED display that is 1080p resolution. It does have 396 pixels per inch. It is 84.3% screen to body ratio, which means the bezels are on the larger side, but it's not that big of a deal. And you also have support for 90 Hz refresh rate, as well as a higher brightness than previous generation. This time around you get up to 800 nits of peak brightness, so it doesn't quite support HDR10 content, but that's alright. Picture this: you get an OLED display, 90 Hz refresh rate, and 800 nits of brightness that works fairly well in outdoor condition. I would say this is the most disappointing part about the Moto G 5G, and that is its display. Moto G 5G provides a 6.6 inch display, which is slightly larger than the A15 5G. However, it's a disappointing IPS LCD panel that only maxes out at 720p, and it does have 267 pixels per inch as far as your pixel density. However, it kind of tries to make up for it in 120 Hz refresh rate. Me personally, I would have sacrificed the 120 Hz refresh rate for a higher resolution and a better quality display. When we put these phones side by side, you can tell that the A15 has the advantage in general, right? So it's sharper. The AMOLED display does help with battery life, so the battery life experience is slightly better on the A15 5G. And while you still get the 120 Hz refresh rate on the Moto G 5G, the 90 Hz can keep up on its own, so it's still pretty nice in that regard. When it comes to watching videos, watching your content, the Galaxy A15 5G just provides a much nicer experience overall. So the OLED display with all of its technology, right, vibrant colors, deeper blacks, and just saturated colors as well, is a much better look, and the brightness is just a much better look than the Moto G 5G with its 720p display that lacks resolution, and it's just overall disappointing. So in 2024, I would have expected this phone to have at least a 1080p display. So again, this is one of those categories that is just a no-brainer. The Galaxy A15 5G, without arguing, has a much better display. Just so that I can help the Moto G 5G a little bit, the speaker quality on the A15 5G is horrible compared to the Moto G 5G. Take a listen. You do have the power button / volume up and down, and they're very clicky, very tactile, very quality buttons overall. And as far as the bottom of the phone, you do get your USB-C 2 microphones as well as your bottom facing speaker. Photo lens without giving you an actual telephoto lens. Alright. So next in the conversation is going to be the performance and the battery life, and I can safely say that the battery life on this phone is nothing short of excellent. Now again, it doesn't really support fast charging. So it's definitely clear that the sacrifices that are made on the A15 5G are less concerning than the sacrifices made on the Moto G 5G as far as kind of display to speaker ratio, if you want to think about it that way. Alright, so now moving on to the camera category. So the Moto G 5G does provide us with a dual camera setup versus the triple camera setup that is found on the Galaxy A15 5G. Let's go ahead and dig a little bit deeper though. So the Galaxy A15 5G has a triple camera setup with your main sensor being a 50 megapixel sensor that does have f1.8 aperture. You also get a 5 megapixel f2.2 aperture that does support ultra wide, and you also get a 2 megapixel macro sensor with a f2.4 aperture. Mind you, I'm not really interested in the macro sensor. They could have just I could have lived without it. The camera experience on the Galaxy A15 5G is really good, so opening up the camera app itself and taking pictures is quick, convenient, doesn't lag a lot, and I would say that when switching between the main sensor and the wide angle sensor, there's a delay, which again, I can live with. It's not the end of the world, but that's just something that I wanted to mention. Even when switching to that macro sensor, there is also a slight delay. Now, the images that came out of this phone they're acceptable. They're up to par with a $199 phone. I would say that they're slightly better than the Moto G 5G, which, let's talk about it a little bit. So the Moto G 5G does ditch a triple camera setup for a dual camera sensor. So again, you get a main camera of 50 megapixel at f1.8 aperture, and you get a useless 2 megapixel f2.4 macro sensor. I wish that they would have gave us kind of a wide angle sensor instead of this, weak macro sensor. So I would say a similar experience. The transition between your main sensor and your macro sensor is faster than the A15. Taking pictures is about the same speed, so it wasn't really much of a difference in that department. I would say that the pictures that come out of the Moto G5G are slightly undersaturated compared to the Galaxy A15. So if you like a more saturated, more, I would say, complete picture, then the A15 is the way to go. However, at the end of the day, if you're buying either of these phones, I don't think camera is your top priority. Now, both of these phones, by the way, they do max out at 1080p at 30 frames per second as far as the video capability goes. Okay, so switching topic of conversation, I want to talk a little bit about the performance of both of these devices. So the Samsung Galaxy A15 has the following specs. So you do get a MediaTek octa-core processor, and you also get the base 128 GB of storage as well as 4 GB of RAM. As far as the Moto G5G goes, Qualcomm Snapdragon 4 Gen 1 processor based on a 6nm architecture. It is octa-core. You also get 128 GB of storage as well as 4 GB of RAM. So when it comes to the performance of the Moto G5G, opening up your daily tasks like your phone app, messaging app, your Google, your Google web browser, your camera, anything that requires kind of light tasks will work fine on this phone. Obviously, you gotta remember that this is an entry-level device. The benchmark scores are as follows. So you get a single core of 849 versus a 1976 on the multi-core performance, which is what I would expect from a processor of that caliber. Now the 4 GB of RAM are kind of a struggle to deal with, but at the end of the day, for lighter tasks, you'll be fine. Similar story with the Galaxy A15 5G, right? So opening up your daily tasks is the same story. The benchmark scores are slightly lower, so you get a 698 single core and 1882 multi-core. All in all, here's what I have to say on a performance standpoint. They both perform very similarly. I would say in some tasks, the Moto G5G happens to be slightly faster, and the A15 did get, I don't want to say hot, but it did get warmer than the Moto G5G in kind of a stress test, so keep that in mind. Again, the performance aspect, very similar. Nothing major or nothing that would make me pick one over the other. So let's go ahead and summarize this. If we look at the Moto G5G, I don't want to say that it's a bad phone, and it does have features that are not found in other devices like the double twist to turn on your camera, the chop to turn on your flash. These are just the small things that I really enjoy using whenever I use a Motorola phone, and it is found across the Motorola lineup, so if you have this phone or another Motorola phone, you won't miss it out. But yeah, it's just fun phone to use. The A15 5G does have the advantage in the display department, and obviously this is one of those things that you'll interact with the most. The back is slippery and it does catch smudges, so it's not kind of the best and most convenient material. However, if I were to pick a phone over the other, I would pick the Galaxy A15 strictly for that display and the faster charging speed, and also slightly for the camera, which are better on the A15 versus the Moto G5G. If the resolution was just right on the Moto G5G, I would have picked it over the Galaxy A15. But because I just can't go with a 720p panel, I would have to give the victory to the Galaxy A15. So tell me in the comments what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.